Let's get into the chaos. Sonic and Shadow, two characters that have been talked about together by a lot of people, and I wanted to join in on the conversation. A lot of people put these two together as like a fight, or like talking about who would win against the other one. I kind of want to talk about that too, but I also just want to go over comparison, see what's similar about them, what's different, because I see a lot of people kind of misunderstanding what these two definitely share in common, and then some things that they are different. Now that's mostly due to people not understanding Sonic, the series of Sonic in general. A lot of characters are misunderstood, so I always want to go out of my way to try to correct some things that I've seen that people get incorrect. I've already talked about these two characters before, but they were with the context of a death battle. And so while I will be going over some similar stuff that I talked about in the death battle, it's not all going to be the exact same. And this is to compare Sonic and Shadow, not Sonic and Mario or Shadow and Mewtwo. So first I want to bring up the appearance. You can obviously tell one Sonic, one Shadow if you show a picture. Unless, you're not really familiar with the Sonic fan base at all. Like, if you basically only ever seen Sonic one time on like a picture or something, and then someone shows you Shadow's picture, that person might be like, "Oh, is that what is that, like evil Sonic or something?" Like they know it won't. They know it's not normal Sonic, but that's what they would say. But other than that, you can obviously tell who's different. Yeah, they share similar traits, but looking at the pictures, it's completely different. I only bring this up because of Sonic Adventure 2, because a lot of people who talk about that game always go over the plot. It's like, oh, this makes no sense. How can you mistake Sonic for Shadow? And yeah, as us as the players, we're clearly shown we're clearly shown one hedgehog and we're clearly shown another hedgehog. It's like, oh, okay, we know that's not Sonic because this Sonic here, and we're told this is a different character. But for Sonic Adventure 2's case, a lot of people probably don't know that there's another hedgehog, right? Sonic has so far been the only hedgehog introduced. And then you see Shadow at night. And if you see Sonic at night, obviously with all that light shining on him, the blue looks like a darker color. It can look like black. And if you're seeing him from a far distance, like if you get a close-up of him, like if you're standing right there, you can be like, yeah, that's not Sonic. Like, if you're Amy and you get up that close in the daytime, sure, you can be like, how could you even make that mistake? But someone seeing him at night from a distance and in different angles, they have enough similar traits to mistake one for another. And I don't see how people don't understand that. Obviously, it's a way to just bash on Sonic Adventure 2. People just kind of like making up stuff to hate on that game when they talk about it. Not everybody, but people who do want to make up hate for that game. And it bothers me that enough people don't bring up the fact that, yeah, from our point of view, we were shown two different characters and told they're different characters. We know that that's not Sonic. But from the context of the story, where you don't know that there's even another hedgehog in existence right now, except for Amy, I guess, and then she's pink and does not have no quills spiked up like Sonic does, and all of a sudden you see this super speedster running around in the middle of the night, you're gonna be like, oh snap, that's Sonic. You might have, you could have an idea that, was that Sonic? Sonic wouldn't do that, but that's the only fast hedgehog I know. What's going on here? It makes sense in the context of the story. All right. I just wanted to say that it really bothers me when I always see a Sonic Adventure 2 review and they're like, yeah, the story, it doesn't make no sense. I'm like, it does. It does. Okay. And then the other thing I want to bring up is their personality, something that you can easily tell that's different between the two of them. Shadow's more of a loner. Sonic's definitely more outgoing, right? But to clear up their personality too, something that people get wrong about them. Some people think Sonic is just a cocky jokester about everything. Most people who have witnessed Sonic in the 2010s and beyond, that's what they think that his character is. or if they see him from Sonic Boom's perspective. And some people also think that he's just kind of like hyperactive and just always on the move. But Sonic is not always hyper. Sonic, a lot of times, at least for me, I think the best Sonic moments are when Sonic has been seen just chilling, relaxing, like in a field of flowers or something, just looking at nature, just looking at how beautiful it is. Like Sonic can relax. He can be a chill guy. And then obviously, I think enough people have pointed out that Sonic's not a jokester completely. Like anyone who's been a Sonic fan since like earlier on in the series always point out that this ain't Sonic. And that's one of the big criticisms about the Sonic series, is that they kind of strayed away from what the characters really are. So yeah, Sonic's not just a jokester, he's a heroic guy who doesn't stand for tyranny of any kind. He enjoys freedom, and he also loves adventure, obviously, like I said that before. And then another thing about him is he does appreciate friendship a lot and like helping people, like being around others, but he also can be a loner too. He doesn't always have to be around people. Like, again, something the 2010s kind of tries to point out, like, oh, he's all about his friends. He needs friendship. Friendship is his big thing, and that's something that's not Sonic's like main thing. He's not his main selling point that he's all about his friends. His main selling point is just freedom, basically. He can't stand that stuff. And he can even want freedom to the point of being a villain, basically, or I guess an anti-hero. Like he's not gonna stand up for he's not gonna stand for any rules that he doesn't think are right, even if it's by someone who's like considered being the good guy, you know? Like if Gun, I think that's something that happens not in the games, but I guess thinking about it from Sonic X's perspective, Gun or the government in general just wants him to do this, wants him to do that, but Sonic doesn't really care, you know, even though it's against the rules, breaking the rules, that's the bad thing. Sonic doesn't care. He's going to stand for what he thinks is right. So in a way, Sonic is an anti-hero in that sense. I think a lot of people wouldn't really put him in that category, but he kind of is an anti-hero. Like, he's going to go against the rules if he wants to. It's just sometimes he plays along just because he's a chill guy. Like sometimes he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, that's cool, whatever. But if it gets to a point where it's like bothering other people, like if someone else is getting affected, he's not gonna stand for that. He's not gonna be chill when someone else is in danger for it. And for Shadow's personality, he's an anti-hero. I know a lot of people think in the 2010s he's been portrayed as a villain, but I don't really see that much. Like I don't see him acting as he normally would when he was portrayed in the I guess the Dark Age. You know, that's like the best portrayal of Shadow. But in the 2010s, I don't really think he's necessarily like being portrayed in like to be, I guess, an evil edgelord or whatever. I think the only time he was portrayed that way is in Sonic Boom, and then that's like the worst of his personality. Like that's the worst Shadow could be portrayed in the context of who Shadow's supposed to be. For me personally, I kind of like the Boom Shadow once I got over the fact that it's not like this ain't the real Shadow. This is a different dimension Shadow, and in that context, he's just a jerk to be a jerk, bro. Like he literally just gets mad at everything and picks any reason to fight like Sonic specifically, I guess. Like Sonic, the one time he was fighting Sonic and he saw that Sonic did a bad job at making what was it, a freaking shelf or something. He said, "Man, you did so bad. You embarrassed all hedgehogs around, and now you shall die for that." Like it's just if that stays separated from the real Shadow, from the main timeline Shadow, I'm okay with that because it's just kind of funny when you look at it that way. Like he's just a jerk to be a jerk. Like he tried to destroy two universes just because I can't remember the reason why. He was just mad because Eggman made him think Sonic said some stuff about him, and then he ended up just, you know what? The universe is gonna die for that. Oh no, he did it because Eggman tricked him. He did it because Eggman tricked him. But the reason he started to fight Sonic was because he said some stuff. So yeah. But this is about the mainline Shadow, right? Shadow's not really like that. He can get... I don't think he can get angry quickly, honestly. Like he can get annoyed very easily, or easily enough, like because he doesn't like tolerating, you know, people who just like to play around or whatever. But he's not just gonna beat you up for that. Shadow is a guy who likes protecting the world in order to keep his promise to Maria, and also because that's kind of in his nature too. Gerald kind of designed him to protect the world and to cure humans of diseases and to do other good stuff. I know people want to say that he's completely a good guy because of that. That's what he was here for. He's here to do good in the world. But Shadow's not just a Boy Scout about it. He does good for the world, but he does it to his own merit and will also change what he believes. Not really what he believes, but he'll change his goals if it means protecting or helping the person or the people he cares about the most. And people kind of miss that point about him. And I understand why, because it's just like, oh, Shadow wasn't really like that. He was tricked to be like that. He was in the when he was first introduced, he was tricked to destroy the world because he thought Maria's promise was to destroy the world, right? So, oh, he was tricked about that. But the thing about it is, he still was going to destroy the world if that was actually Maria's promise. So if Maria's true desire was to destroy the world, he was gonna do it. That's the thing about him, and people miss that part. But he just so happened to give a promise to someone who has a good, kind heart, right? Uh, he probably may not have resonated with Maria if he didn't have a good, kind heart. You could say that much, but if if it was someone he perceived as good, right? So if it was Maria, and Maria was really sad and was like, "You gotta destroy the world," he's gonna do it. And that's also why I don't think Shadow the Hedgehog portrayed his personality in a poor way, because in Shadow the Hedgehog he was also, if you go the dark route, he was also conditioned to believe that Maria's wish was to destroy the world and to get payback on the humans. Well, I guess not necessarily Maria's wish, but Black Doom was telling him that it's the right thing to do because that's what they destroyed your family, so they gotta suffer. And Shadow's like, yeah, that's exactly what needs to be done. But I just wanted to be clear about both of their personalities, and I'm not really talking about comparisons because you can obviously tell that Sonic being all about freedom and Shadow being about discipline, and they're both about saving people, but they both do it in their own way. Shadow kind of does it in a discipline way, and Sonic does it in a freedom way. But they both end up being anti-heroes. I think the difference is Sonic sticks to more heroic morals while being an anti-hero. So he'll go against the rules and what other people think are right in order to do what needs to be done, but he's not gonna do it in a selfish or aggressive manner really. But Shadow does. I remember commenting one time about someone else talking about Shadow's personality. I said Shadow Shadow would protect the world, but he would be the guy to do it by any means necessary. He would use any tactic he needs to get it done. He'll fight evil with evil, but Sonic won't do that. He won't use evil. I guess not try not to, because he used it. I guess you could say he used it in Sonic and the Secret Rings, because the negative freaking world rings entered his body or whatever. And then you could also say the werehog, but those are kind of forced upon him against his will, and he also it didn't change him at all, his desires or whatever. It just kind of gave him this new power, and it was like, I'm still Sonic. I'm still gonna do things Sonic's way. I'm thinking about that. That's kind of what Shadow did in freaking Shadow Generations when he got Black Doom's power. He's like, I got these powers, but you're not gonna control me with them. I'm gonna do things my way. But like I said, Sonic does it in a more heroic way. He has, I guess, more strict boundaries against himself on how he's gonna react to something, while Shadow doesn't so much. And that's not to say Shadow won't. Um, he doesn't. It's not to say he doesn't have boundaries and doesn't try or won't try to do things a more heroic way at first, but he'll definitely resort to doing things a darker way if that's what's necessary. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how there's somewhat similar in personality too, as they are with their appearance, but different enough that you can tell, like, just glancing at them in a direct way, you can clearly see the difference between the two of them in that sense. Literally, the best way to look at these examples of the true Sonic and Shadow's personality is just, I think, would just be watching Sonic X, just like any episode really that has them in it. As long as it's not like a filler joke episode that they do sometimes. But yeah, any of those episodes kind of portrays the personality at their best. And people will say that's a spin-off or whatever, but I think it's like the closest to representing how Sonic and Shadow are truly meant to act. And also people point out easily, Sonic 06, Shadow's personality there was like a peak as it's ever been. And I agree with that. And then the new Shadow generations, just looking at any example in there, Shadow's basically peak. I could go on listing different examples all day, but I think you might get the picture by now. They're both anti-hero. Sonic's just a more heroic anti-hero, and Shadow's a little less of a heroic anti-hero, but I don't think he's as bad as most traditional anti-heroes who just kind of are selfish about what their desires are. But Shadow's not necessarily selfish, like he still wants the good of the world, but just will go down darker ways than Sonic would to accomplish that. Get to the more interesting stuff, I think, the abilities and powers and equipment. Both of them have super speed, super strength, super durability, obviously. Well, people like to try to decide who's better in which category. For speed, I would say they're honestly equal. There's instances in certain games where one goes faster than the other. For instance, like if you look at the Olympic games, Sonic always has maximum speed, while Shadow has a little less. I think Sonic Chronicles, Sonic has a little more speed than Shadow. And then in Sonic Battle, Shadow actually has the faster speed, so they both take turns getting faster than each other sometimes. So I think they're meant to be equal still. Like one goes faster this time, one goes faster the other time. Just call them equal. Especially, like you might be able to say that Sonic's faster strictly on foot. Like if they had to both put a pair of shoes on, like if Shadow's hover shoes aren't allowed in the race, then maybe Sonic's just faster on feet that way. I don't know if Shadow can take off his shoes. They might be genetically programmed into him or like genetically fused into him. I don't know. But yeah, the point is there's still the same speed at the end of the day because Shadow can propel himself forward with Chaos Energy to fly, and that's still traveling. That's still travel speed. Yeah, when they both propel themselves forward with the boost energy that they have, like I guess whatever power they're using to propel themselves forward, they're going the same speed. People also like to bring up combat speed because that's important when they're comparing about a fight between each other. I think they're the same in that too. They both dodge lasers very easily, can dodge them from like the same distance apart. I can't, like, maybe there's an instance I can find where like, oh, Shadow's technically farther away here, well, I mean technically closer to the laser, and than Sonic is, right? And say that Shadow's faster that way, but from what I can tell, they both dodge it lasers at like directly in their face, basically. So same speed. I think Shadow is actually portrayed to have better fighting skills than Sonic. At least anytime you can actually see them fight in like a cutscene type of way or like a TV show type of way. In the games, it's often left up to whichever one you're playing at the time. Like in Sonic Adventure 2, it's you pick either story. Whoever you pick, that person wins. In Sonic Heroes, whoever you pick, that person wins. So it's always left ambiguous that way. Um, the only time where Sonic definitively won was Sonic Generations, but that was retconned recently as Shadow was put in Shadow Generation. Shadow was portrayed as like holding back in that fight. And then even if you don't want to consider that contradiction or the retconning, Shadow also beats Sonic in in a straight fight in Shadow the Hedgehog. You fight Sonic and you don't, there's obviously not a Sonic story to play where you pick when you pick Sonic to win. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so Shadow did beat Sonic, and it was more impressive for Shadow because he was also fighting against a gun, a gun soldier and a powerful mech. So in that context, Shadow would be stronger. But like I said, most of the time you just pick who wins, and story-wise, in either story, it's not definitive who would win because in Sonic Adventure 2, it's revealed that neither one of them gets to accomplish their mission. Sonic never destroyed the reactor because all the Chaos Emeralds were put in there. And in Sonic Heroes, it doesn't the fight doesn't mean anything to the story. Basically, all you know is that they did meet up with each other, but that's all you know. And plus, they were with their teams anyway, so one of some teammates could be more helpful than the others. Like I think Omega and Rouge both contribute more than Tails does. No offense to Tails, but that's just how I think. Topic for another day, maybe. But yeah, other than that, in any TV show media, like you could say like it's all spin-off, but that's like the only other thing to compare it to. And like I said, Sonic X is a good representation of how Sonic characters act in the games. So I think I always like to bring up Sonic X because of that reason, you know. And in that, it always seems like Shadow has the upper hand, and like the fights never completely end, but it always seems like Shadow has the upper hand, and then Sonic gets a good hit on him, and then Shadow retreats. That's what it seems like in every instance. And everything besides Sonic X, Shadow's always portrayed as the better fighter. In Sonic Prime, it was shown that like Shadow was basically kicking Sonic's ass in Sonic Prime. In the Sonic movie, Shadow was also kicking Sonic's ass. Oh, and then Sonic Boom, obviously, Shadow was kicking Sonic's ass in that too. But and he was kicking Sonic's ass while he had help. Okay, so it seems like Shadow is supposed to be the better fighter of the two. Like that's the only thing we can really go off of is the outside content. But if you want to say that they're equal fighting skills just based off the games, then you can say that. And with that, I also bring up that the strength is basically equal because if the fighting skills are basically equal and then they still come out in a tie, then that means that the strength is probably equal. I think Shadow has the better strength feat between the two of them. I just remember from Sonic X that Shadow basically pulled a planet-sized dragon, or was fighting against a planet-sized dragon. Well, not a planet-sized. It was planetoid, like what, a moon-sized, slightly moon-sized, continental size. It was a really big. Okay, it was a really big dragon, like the size of a mountain probably, and Shadow was able to pull against it. And I haven't seen Sonic do anything like that. The only other thing you can compare it to is just Sonic fighting against Eggman's mechs that are able to dish out a lot of power. But yeah, Shadow can fight the same mechs. I mean, he hasn't directly fought them, but he's fought other Eggman mechs that would be similar in power. So yeah, they're basically similar, if not Shadow being slightly stronger. That goes for strength, and for power output. Again, I think Shadow is slightly stronger. I mean, it depends for the power output, right? Like I just brought up the freaking competing with Eggman's ships, which you can consider power or strength, as long as they're doing physical, right? You can consider either one. But for the direct strongest attacks, they both have the light speed attack, and according to my calculations, I think that's Sonic's strongest attack. And for Shadow, it literally depends if that's his strongest attack or if it's Chaos Blast. The only context I have to go off of is that the light speed attack was introduced first, and then Chaos Blast is portrayed to be Shadow's actual strongest move. So they both have that equal strongest attack, and then Shadow's strongest attack is Chaos Blast. Shadow would be stronger than Sonic. But you don't have to view it that way because the light speed attack is not in Shadow the Hedgehog. His strongest attack is just his normal homing attack, and his Chaos Blast is 8 times stronger than that. Okay? And if you think about it, Sonic Heroes came before that game. Their homing attacks were equal. They both did 3 damage at their strongest, to the Eggman robots. But Sonic's Lightspeed attack is able to destroy all the robots in the game. The strongest being up to the strongest one having 30 damage. So that means the Lightspeed attack is 10 times stronger than the homing attack, which means the Lightspeed attack is stronger than Chaos Blast if you compare it to the homing attack. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. It's either Sonic and Shadow are equal, or Shadow has a stronger power output. And that's not including, obviously, Shadow moving his inhibitor range, which is obviously makes him just way more powerful than Sonic by a large margin. That's beside the point. So now we have durability, and I actually would say that Sonic has more durability just simply from what I've seen from them. When they're fighting, it seems like a lot of times Sonic gets a hit in on Shadow, and Shadow just wants to retreat. It also seems like Sonic gets up for more attacks in general, like Sonic's usually beaten down and just still has the power to go, like get up and keep going. Or maybe that's just Sonic just having more willpower than Shadow. I don't know what you want to call it. I can see it as durability. I could give that point to Sonic. The only feats I would have to go off of is just calculating how strong a Chaos Emerald's output is, because both of them fight against machines that utilize Chaos Emeralds. I think Sonic has fought the enemy with the most Chaos Emeralds, that being Chaos 7 in Sonic Generations. I don't think Shadow's fought anyone with 7 Chaos Emeralds. Well, by Shadow Generation, Shadow does fight against Metal Overload, which took, he didn't have 7 Chaos Emeralds, but he could fight against an enemy that did have 7 Chaos Emeralds. I mean, he fought against Super Sonic and Super Tails and Super Knuckles. So by that logic, maybe Shadows has more durability if he can tank hits from Metal Overlord, but it might be too close to call, because while I think Metal Overlord definitely had more durability than Chaos 7, I can't say that about attack power because neither of them could affect Sonic's super form at the time. I guess since Sonic Heroes is a later game, Metal Overlord might be the stronger opponent just in general. I don't know, it's just a lot of comparing each enemy and stuff, and it's kind of hard to say for certain. But if we're talking about just from what I've seen directly, not just like, oh, well, he technically fought this guy who's technically supposed to be this strong, so that means this character is technically stronger than this other character, or more durable, whatever the heck I was talking about. And I know it's a way people like to analyze characters by scaling. I try to stay away from that as much as possible. It's just hard with durability, because durability you kind of do have to scale, because a lot of the time the hardest things you get hit by all the other characters. But if we're all looking at individual feats, which I am, that you can actually like see something happening and get a scale the durability from that, I would have to give it to Sonic, because I've seen him get hit by nuclear explosions and come out okay. Like the explosion of the Death Egg, he was on there when the Death Egg exploded, and he was okay in that. Shadow, I don't think Shadow has done anything like that directly, so I might give the durability to Sonic. And like I said, I think that's what they go for in when they fight each other. It seems like Shadow's always beating down on Sonic, but Sonic, stays in the battle. He stays resilient, and then gets a few hits on Shadow, or one good hit or something, and Shadow's just feels like retreating, or is down for the count for that moment. In terms of Sonic Generations, I guess I would say, because that's what Sonic beat Shadow. So now I'm just gonna go down the abilities they have in each game. I'm gonna talk about the ones they have that are the same, and then the different ones they have. They both have, in Sonic Adventure 2, they both have Lightspeed Dash and the Lightspeed Attack, the Flame Bracelet, Mystic Melody. Sonic has the Magic Hands, the Bounce Bracelet. Shadow has Chaos Control without Chaos Emerald, and that's important. Also, I forgot to mention they have the Spin Dash and Homing Attack, but I just kind of think that's something that's obvious to see because it's in every game. In Sonic Heroes, though, they both have the tornado attack. No differences in Sonic Heroes, besides the fact that Sonic utilizes the light speed attack and Shadow doesn't in that game. In Shadow the Hedgehog, Shadow gains abilities like flying with Chaos Control, Chaos Blast, and Chaos Boost, slowing down time. So at that point in time, those are all abilities that Shadow had over Sonic, and Sonic had like nothing to replicate them. In Sonic 06, Sonic has the different shoes that give him more speed. He can slow down time now, like Shadow does. He can shrink himself. He can launch himself. He just like jumps for a gem. It's kind of like a very extended light speed dash, and he only needs one item to follow it. And he can also do a tornado while standing still. Well, Shadow can too, but his isn't like an actual tornado. It's like he kicks up wind, but it's not portrayed as like a actual spinning tornado. And then Sonic also gets the electric shield, which is something that he can also do in the classic games. Not an electric shield, but he gets insta shield, and Shadow did not get anything like that. Sonic and the Black Knight, I know this is going to say this is a different Shadow, but the only difference about him is his personality and who he thinks it is, but not his abilities. Even when you go to the description of Sir Lancelot, they just straight up say it's actually Shadow the Hedgehog. So I think he should be able to perform the same abilities, especially since this next one is simply just him using two abilities together, basically. He's using Chaos Punishment, and that is basically just him freezing time and teleporting at the same time. Like, after he teleports to an enemy, and then once he reappears, time is frozen. And then he also hits harder. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1 package, boosting his strength while stopping time and teleporting to get closer. And I almost forgot to mention that Sonic gets Time Break in Sonic and the Secret Rings. But like I already said, he has in Sonic 06 he got a gem for that. But I guess if you were to think, oh, Sonic 06 isn't canon, it got erased from existence. Well, Sonic can still slow down time without those shoes. In Sonic Colors, Sonic gets the Wisp powers, which is just like an additional type of equipment. It's I want to say an ability. It seems like Sonic has this ability to like mold with alternate power sources easier than Shadow can. I mean, technically Shadow can use the Wisp because in Sonic Forces, you use a Wisp to get your boost power, but Shadow has never been shown using the other Wisp in that way to like turn himself into a laser or get burst energy. But Sonic can do that. And that's also kind of something in Sonic and the Secret Ring, Sonic and the Black Knight. Sonic kind of molds with the energy of that world. In Sonic and Secret Rings, he gets Sora's power. Sonic and the Black Knight, he can combine with frickin' Excalibur. Yeah, he can form himself an Excalibur. I don't know if Excalibur can just do that to anybody, I think. But, I mean, the way it's portrayed, it seems like it's only a Sonic thing. Sonic and the, Sonic, that's not the fucking name. I was gonna say Sonic and the Werehog. Sonic Unleashed, he gets turned into a Werehog again, once again, meshing with another power, that being Dogaia's. But that seems more like something that Doggaia could possibly do to anybody. He possesses people in the town, I think? But I guess they don't change form, so maybe that is a Sonic only thing. I don't know. We haven't seen anyone else in that situation, so we won't really know. But anyways, now on to Sonic Generations. If you thought he didn't keep the time break from Sonic and the Secret Rings, he has the time break here, so he once again can still slow down time. Even if you thought Sonic 06 wasn't canon, he don't get Ashala's power, he can still do it. He gets ring time. I don't know how strong, like, what type of opponents that could technically be used on in the real context of like outside of game mechanics, but you know, he got that. He can increase his water movement, which isn't really that good in terms of this battle, but he also can equip himself with a shield. That's where he gets a double jump for the first time, I think. Or was that in Sonic Colors? Anyways, Sonic Lost World, he can charge his homing attack, which is something that happens in Sonic Heroes, but they don't charge it on their own. They technically get a power-up to charge it up, like an energy core. But in Sonic Lost World, he can just charge up himself. And now he can finally throw a projectile, like Shadow's Chaos Spear, which is something I did not mention that he has. But you know what, I also forgot to mention that Sonic has Sonic Winds in So SA2 is just not portrayed except for in the final battle and in the two-player mode. But other than that, if you want to combine all the abilities together, you can say he already had a Chaos Spear equivalent since SA2. But the difference up until Lost World was that Shadow can stun opponents with it in Sonic 06, and now Sonic can basically do the same thing. So he's now has the same projectile abilities as Shadow, just Shadow is seen with it more often than Sonic. I would like to bring up Sonic Chronicles. Again, people are gonna say that's not canon or whatever, spin-off game. I still like to include the abilities as long as it doesn't really like contradict anything. All Shadow really gets in that game is a different way to utilize Chaos Blast. You can shoot it as like a beam of energy rather than just like an explosion of energy, like it's a concentrated blast. He gets Chaos Rift, which is a instant KO ability. Knocks out an opponent immediately, regardless of anything else, unless they're in an invincible state. If it doesn't knock out an opponent, like it's a 30% chance to do so, but if it doesn't do that, it'll put them to sleep or distract them. And then he also gets the ability to make his Chaos Spear pierce through armor. It's just how Chaos Spear operates in the game, but in context of Shadow's Chaos Spears throughout the series, I just like to think that Shadow can just utilize Chaos Spear in many different ways to help him out. He can use it as a straight up attack, he can use it as a stunning ability, now he can use it to just pierce straight through armor. Sonic Chronicles honestly should have been brought up before. I'm trying to go in timeline order, but I'm just blanking on some of this stuff. Anyways, for Sonic Forces, all Shadow gets is, like I said, he might be able to use Wisp powers, but maybe not. All that really did was give him the boost, so it just gave him extra energy. And then Sonic gets a better air boost, so now he can like boost in the air and like travel as if he's like flying for real. Like you can go long distances. I think he falls a lot slower while boosting, so he can glide basically now. Finally, in Sonic Frontiers, Sonic gets a lot of cool abilities. He can use multiple wind waves. I forget the heck the attack's called, but he can basically just kick those. I'll just call it Sonic Winds because that's basically what it is. He can just use Sonic Winds indefinitely. He can use the Psyloop, which honestly is just like a extra powered tornado because he can just use it without spinning around something too fast. He can go around it really slow and knock opponents into the air, knock down the defenses, activate stuff in the on Starfall Islands. Like it's just a way better upgraded tornado. It can interact with the cyber world and still perform what the tornado does. And he doesn't even have to try. He doesn't have to go fast with it. And then he gets the Wind Wave Blast. That's not what it's called. I'm calling it the Wind Wave Blast. It's basically the exact same thing as the kicking wind attack, but he does it as like he just shoots it as a stronger variation of what he was doing before, but he actually shoots it from his hand instead of kicking it with his feet, and he doesn't have to remain stationary. He can slide with it, like he can move to the side with it. And then as Supersonic, he can make Supersonic clones, and he can also make Supersonic chains. Alright, so that's cool too, but like I said, I'm not really worried about Chaos Emerald abilities right now. It's just that's now something Sonic can do with Chaos Emeralds that Shadow can't. Now for the last one, Sonic Battle. The reason why I say Sonic Battle for last is not because I forgot, because I left it out of timeline order. It's because Sonic Battle has like the most differences between the two of them from a game that they're actually both in together. Sonic gets a drill bomb, and he can use the light speed attack in with one ring and from like a farther distance. It's kind of like what I said about the that one gem from Sonic 06, but he does it with an attack this time. Shadow gets to enhance a lot of his attacks with Chaos Energy, a bunch of his punches and kicks, and he also gets Chaos Burst, which is like a shorter distance Chaos Blast, but it's not one burst of energy, it's like a torrent of energy around him. Another benefit of Chaos Burst is the fact that he can hide in distorted space while he's using it. So it's like teleporting, but then remaining in teleportation until he's ready to come back out and attack. He also has Roaming Chaos, which is an attack that Shadow uses to have a ball of chaos energy just follow him around. So if he's caught up in a situation where he can't move for some reason, the Roaming Chaos can just attack by itself. He can get himself out of a situation. And lastly, they both can heal and defend in this game. Well, defend isn't really a power, it's just they're just putting the guard up. But they can both heal and power themselves up. I don't know whose is faster. I did not even pay attention to that, and I don't feel like looking it up. They can just both heal and power themselves up. That's all you really need to know. And that's not just like a Sonic battle mechanic, because both of them can already power themselves up in different games. Obviously, Shadow has Chaos Boost. Sonic can charge his homing attack, and Sonic also would, like it's a common theme for them to be able to charge up. So this isn't just a battle mechanic for them specifically. Shadow does get abilities in Shadow Generation, but I don't think any of them stay with him. I think they disappeared with Black Doom, and a lot of them are just mobility options that honestly doesn't really matter all too much. The only one that would have mattered was the when he does the ring mode, because that's like a extra boost. It's like a super form for him. But yeah, I don't know if that's something he still has. So let me go over all the abilities that Shadow only has and Sonic only has. Just looking through this list I just made up. Shadow has Time Stop and Teleportation without a Chaos Emerald. He has Chaos Punishment, which is basically both of them combined. He has Chaos Boost, which is a better version of charging up his power. Like I just mentioned, Sonic can charge up his power, but Chaos Boost is strictly better because not only does he increase his power, but he can also get more durability, like an insane boost in durability. Chaos Blast, specifically the burst of energy. If you're talking about the concentrated blast, Sonic can kind of replicate that with his new ability from Sonic Frontiers. It's almost like that. But Shadow also has Chaos Burst, the torrent of energy that Sonic can't replicate. Sonic also can't hide in distorted space like Chaos Burst provides. Sonic cannot do no Chaos Rift, and he can't do the same variety that Chaos Spear can produce. Those are all strictly Shadow's abilities, as well as Roaming Chaos and Chaos Snap. I forgot to mention Chaos Snap when I brought up Sonic Battle. But he just basically makes a burst of energy appear somewhere in the area by snapping his fingers. And for Sonic, surprisingly, he can bounce, something that Shadow has never been able to do. I guess Sonic can make his when he balls up, he can like make himself kind of like spring off of stuff. Like Shadow can obviously jump off of walls and everything, but I guess he doesn't have the same springy power that Sonic has. Sonic also has the magic hands. He has ring time. Oh my gosh. He can create shields. He can shrink himself, but that's only if you still include the ability from Sonic 06. He can use the Psyloop, which I said is like the Tornado, but strictly an upgrade. Shadow can obviously do the Tornado, but not the Psyloop yet. He's probably going to get that eventually. But Sonic also has a Drill Bomb. He can do a better version of the Lightspeed Dash because he can do it with one wing, and he can do it from a farther distance away. And he can combine himself with extra energies that I don't think Shadow can do. We haven't seen him do it yet. But yeah, those are Sonic's abilities that Shadow doesn't have. So obviously Shadow has more abilities because he's seen using a whole lot of different chaos attacks that Sonic can't do. Sonic might be able to do them with the Chaos Emerald, but even with Chaos Emeralds, we haven't seen him do most of them. Although Sonic can also do a few things that Shadow can't. Like I said, Sonic can now do clones with Chaos Emeralds and also create chains that I've seen in Sonic Frontiers and also Sonic Superstars. But since like all the other characters can use clones too, so Shadow likely will be able to sometime soon, but he just hasn't shown that ability yet. So in conclusion, I think Shadow has a slight advantage in a fight against Sonic, but that doesn't mean Sonic can't beat Shadow. Like, they are very close in abilities and stats, and just because Shadow may have more powers, slightly stronger, he can increase his power way more than Sonic can by removing his inhibitor rings. That doesn't mean Shadow's gonna win every time, because a fight can go so many different ways, and Sonic still has some advantages over Shadow. But, you know, if you really just pay attention to the story just in general, they always are portrayed as being equal. And, you know, based on everything I've went through, they all equal, even if you try to, like, scale them. One may have been able to do something that the other hasn't, but not necessarily because they can't do that, just because they haven't been in that situation.